If I manage to say half of what I'm thinking, this is going to be very interesting. But the basic groundwork of this text, which is impromptu, is to respond to the nightmare weasel who put the poker faced, cartoonish, malicious sticker of Obama on the CCAC elevator outside the library with the caption, "The joke's on you." Um, I think in some ways it resembles the idea that a person could be blamed for entertaining some of the diplomatic talk of Sergei Lavrov and Vladimir Putin, as Oliver Stone did when he interviewed Vladimir Putin. In other words, it would be like saying with pride, I'm one of the people being deceived by them. Tom O'Connor, who owned Flynn Construction, I believe, owned the van that raced insensibly at Kelly School, leading to my determination to leave the city of Pittsburgh. Used to say I've worked for everything I have, and of course he was in the pipeline of book country that includes John Schulman, who was ripping off the Carnegie Museum for $8 million. And one of the reasons they got away with it was because they were supported by Obama in his claim that the joke is on me. It's not a very good joke. O'Connor was full of these kinds of jokes. He used to say, "You like Peter Gabriel. He don't like you." And that's the joke is on you when it comes to Putin and entertaining diplomatic considerations. And of course, we're not talking about Russia. We're talking about Squirrel Hill in the city of Pittsburgh, Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania government. But they don't mind just moving the whole thing over to the Ukraine and say, let's talk it out over there, boy. So what is it that I see from this? Well, when you get identified as somebody who has editorial opinions, people want to impinge on you what they see as the correct view, lest the sheep go awry by being read by you. And so they see it as an intonement for a sort of unionized vision, that you become part of a team, that you have a group think, that there's solidarity and a point of view. And they use this to cruelly deceive in very criminal ways. I'll give you a very good example. What's going on with the union, Peter Gabriel, the city of Seattle, Tacoma Community College, UW Dialectical, Putin, Oliver Stone, Spike Lee. What's going on with the NAACP? What's going on with Gallaudet University for the Deaf, the University of Pittsburgh, Flynn Construction, the Yancers in the East Liberty District of Pittsburgh, Midori Goto, the UN, Greta Thunberg. What's going on with climate change movement, Fridays for Future? What's going on with the Franklin Graham Society, the Trump bigots, the Reagan Farm? What's going on with the Graham Foundation? What's going on with North Korea and South Korea? What's going on with China and Chinatown? What's going on with the queers? What's going on with the Indians? What's going on with the people of India? What's going on with the Jews? What's going on with the spectrum of the Green Party syndicate? What's going on with the Rainbow Coalition? What's going on with the rainbow of love and the rainbow of hate, the rainbow of life and the rainbow of death? What's going on with my peers and what's going on with my kin? has nothing to do with trying to identify the truth about anything at all or contain a group consensus in what the proper opinion is. It's taking turns. That's all. They're just stepping up and taking turns battering somebody, one after another, time after time after time, making out that the joke is on me. That's all. And behind this is the arch criminal perpetrator, John Lennon, and his spiritual foundation. And once they decided that they'd settled on somebody, they settled on him real good. I was, Russell Bennett said, the person he most wanted to meet. I believe I was the person that many of these people most wanted to be. And so they said, therefore, we'll make sure that this kid's life is not worth living. In a Pittsburgh public school, we had a problem when there were substitute teachers. The actual teacher of the actual subject could command silence in the class. But when a substitute showed up, all heck broke loose. This is the problem of the substitute. What do you think is going to happen if the walrus decides to substitute a double for the joke is on you? To get back to something that's more responsible and respectable, because I don't think any of those people who I listed are particularly responsible or respectable in their choice of doings with regard to me. After all, I'm a deaf, old, unarmed person. And their legacy of abuse is pretty shocking. Yet I'm rational. I didn't go in there. I have some dark times. I tend to keep the situation ventilated properly. I have people who I continue to admire, who I don't blame. You will notice I didn't include Pope Francis in that list. He's a fine human being. Probably heartbroken by the same kinds of struggles. I hear Lao Tzu at the end of his life walked into the desert to die, sick at heart with the ways of men. And it should be pointed out that Lao Tzu was an ancient Chinese exemplar. Exemplar. Not that he exampled others, but that he set an example for others. Because when we talk about North Korea, of course, we're inclined to talk about Russia and China, ancient civilizations. So what's wrong with being deceived by Putin? Oh, you like Putin. He don't like you. When there's something reasonable to consider. Well, I guess in some ways it's maybe simpler to have two categories than three. Three categories would be the person who's deceived by Putin and truly believes what they are being deceived by. Second category is a person being deceived by Putin to see where it leads. A third category is somebody who just refuses to be deceived by Putin. Possibly a fourth category is a person who believes what Putin says, or at least some of it. And this brings us back to the third category, the person who is deceived and doesn't know it. Now, in Western affairs, there's a tendency to say if you don't know that he's a deceiver, then you are deceived, and to blot out further discussion in favor of dictatorial dictums. I find it much more interesting to challenge myself. Is it possible that Putin is telling the truth but has come to the end of the ability to have faith in the West? Okay, that's the beginning of deception about him, many would hold. So what is it that's going on, do I think, from all of this convo? Well, obviously, it's insane to have bombed Mariupol the way it was bombed. And it was also insane to have bombed the Mekong Delta and Iraq the way they were bombed. So one asks themselves, is somebody from Eurasia standing up to the hawks that unleash these things from neo-NATO who killed JFK? Is there a certain amount of valor behind it? Well, I don't see that. The worst of all worlds was the Hitler-Stalin Pact. It meant you couldn't trust anybody. You know, you were forced to choose a side or be shot by the side you didn't choose, who was the one who was most proximate to you. There was no room for the entitlement to think for yourself. And of course, both sides argued that they were looking after the people who were superior to others. Well, it's a little different when there's active inferiorization. I'm horrified by what I've heard about the Khmer Rouge, but I also know there was inferiorization of them by the West. The word gook, for example, didn't mean fellow human being in the eyes of the person who used that term in wartime hostility. And of course, it's also true about the word Jap. But the difference is that Vietnam never attacked us the way that the Japanese did. Some words are attempts to defend yourself from the desire to humanize somebody who just wants to kill you. And this is where the joke is on you when you hold out a hand of faith and get a bayonet and answer. So the question is Putin telling the truth when he says he held out the hand of faith and got a bayonet and answer? The truth is hidden. It's mysterious in the Ukraine. Why that would be, I'm not sure. And the war came fast and furious on my information and interest. So I still don't know the answer. But the case he makes is that NATO said they wouldn't expand and then did. NATO is an anti-Russian organization. That is a fact. And the double talk of Bill Clinton can only be abhorred. So there's some truth to the predicate. And that, of course, is the lure to be deceived that emerges. What do I think is actually going on? Well, I think it's silly to believe that the kind of goblins that leap out of the hybrid war situation, like I met at Carnegie Mellon, are from Putin's trolls, at least alone. They were Trumpy tuned Putinese maybe, but they were Trumpy Tunians, and they were goblins, and they were anti-American, and they were with Barack Obama and saying the joke is on me. They were all lining up to take turns battering somebody and then say, let's hear you make peace now. Dog guys, what's your diplomatic line? Oh, that's funny. Ha ha ha. The joke's on you, queer ball. You like me, I don't like you. And then they come and take another round of turns. Okay, so that's what we get in government in the state of Washington, the state of Pennsylvania, state of many places I've lived. That's what they call government. Taking turns on an innocent person to see what they say because they're a poet. And this is what Roger Waters thinks is funny. And Gweener, Yoko Ono, I call her, because I don't think that she's really a human being. Her idea of love is exactly the rub it in your face spitball. That you hold out hope and get a bayonet and answer. That's it. That's what she is. That's her whole her. And she's turned love into a weapon of hideousness. So, what do I think is really going on with Russia? I think one of the things that's happened is that um, they've been lied to spitefully, and people have not recognized their contribution when they made contributions. I think that Sergei Lavrov is telling the truth when they um, lament the loss of Sovietologists. That Americans think they dominate Russia and no longer need to try to understand. I've tried to understand. Do I have anything to contribute to that? I think there's a language barrier in the idea of friendly and unfriendly. And it has to do with the thicket of wokeism in America. If you go too far with the idea of friendly and unfriendly, you got the idea where the woman can't tell you when to stop. And of course, I stood up to that. They castrated me for it. So something very evil and anti-chivalrous is at the heart of the city of Pittsburgh's Fernholder Bridge gang. The mutants of Trumpy Tunes, Flynn Construction, Putin, Joke's on You, pro-Obama roadshow, taking turns on the queer bait, as they name it. But I think there is some fundamental difficulty in grasping that friendly and unfriendly isn't necessarily the contrast that Americans think in. And I think we need to try to come do some work understanding what Putin has in mind and trying to focus on friendly and unfriendly, because friendly can be very um, threatening to some people. I remember when that woman was being picked on leading the busing crowd, and I extended a hand to her, and she slapped me, and um, I forgave her immediately. I understood the lesson, though, but um, that doesn't mean that the provincial norm should owe me $25 for it or something. But because it wasn't a lewd gesture, it was trying to show that I too was a human being. But anyway, the point is that these kinds of things are silliness from childhood. I mean, but it's the same simple gesture that you got constantly from North Korea. I don't understand that and profess to. I have a book, a novel here called Friend by a North Korean writer. It's evidently popular in North Korea, and I have some dialectical books back and forth about them. I gave a book that was very, very precious and valuable on the art of North Korea to school, because school did do some good for me. So, but I'm not presuming to intrude my views on them. I'm just putting into perspective. If it was up to the wheel of fortune, they would have their opportunity to take their turn. So maybe that would be solidarity building with Greg Carl, whose moral of the story, of course, I don't want to see adopted. I think he's low down, reprehensible, never step human being. No matter how smart he and Jeff Thompson were. I mean, if you look into it, you'll see Jeff Thompson gave me a stopwatch. Gail Burstyn used second hands on her letters. So, the Golf Corporation, Penfield Downs, this was partly kinship. The Mitsui book, I mean, he built dams in Japan. It was also architectural from on high. I mean, it was a object lesson, that all of them are building solidarity by taking turns. And this is Greg Carl in his wisdom, and probably Michael Flynn's contraption or something. If you look at resistance groups, Pittsburgh claims to be a resistance group who took on the Pinkertons, for example. There were groups like the Loco Focus. They're very interesting. They didn't want to see banks um, lend out money that they did only had on paper. And there were the bonus army, who were given bonuses that were predated, and they were engrossed in poverty from the Depression, and they lined up outside Herbert Hoover's White House mansion, pleading and demanding to have them cashed um, before the terms on which they were dated. They couldn't wait. They were starving. The families were starving. And Hoover sent in Douglas MacArthur, to clear them out, you know. And Reagan's policy, working with General Walker, another general, not General Douglas MacArthur. There's no research I know of connecting those guys. That would be interesting to see. I've seen Douglas MacArthur not being very friendly to JFK. But the joke was on JFK, you know. I mean, Charles Bronson got Jackie Kennedy to climb out of his saddle. It was Licky Chops in Pepperland.